I still remember the day Reuben walked into our kitchen with that smile. You know, the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes? That was the smile. He had a crumpled piece of paper in his hand and a strange glow about him, like he'd just stepped into the spotlight of his own private stage. "Paulina," he said, holding it up like a priest lifting a relic, "our lives are about to change forever." At first, I laughed. After all, Reuben was always chasing quick schemes, scratch-offs, poker nights, those sketchy online investments. I thought this was another one of those illusions. But when he unfolded the ticket and I saw the numbers printed across it, something in my stomach tightened. It was real. He had the winning lottery ticket. The house suddenly felt too small for the enormity of what he was saying. Our kids, Emily and Jacob, came running in when they heard us shouting. They thought we were fighting again. But instead, Reuben swept them up, spinning them around, laughing like he hadn't in years. I wanted to believe this was the miracle we had been waiting for. 4 months, we'd been struggling, mortgage late notices piling up, my car barely starting in the mornings, my job at the diner cutting back hours. Life had worn me thin. So when Reuben kept repeating, "We're rich now, Paulina. We're finally free," part of me wanted to collapse into his arms and thank the heavens. But then I saw it. That flicker in his eyes. A hunger I didn't recognize. That night, while the kids were asleep, Reuben and I sat at the kitchen table, staring at each other across the winning ticket like it was some fragile thing. "This is it," he said. "Our chance to start over. But we have to be smart about it." Smart. That's what he called it. Within days, Reuben was acting different. His phone never left his side. He started going out at odd hours, saying he had business to take care of. He didn't even take me to the claim office, said it was better if only one name was on the paperwork, to keep things simple. And stupidly, I agreed. When the check came through, he was already distant. He bought a new car without telling me. He moved money into accounts I didn't even know existed. And one morning, I woke up to find his side of the bed empty, his closet half cleared out, and a note on the dresser. "Don't look for me. I'll send money for the kids when I can." I thought my heart stopped beating right then. The kids asked me where their father was, and I didn't know what to say. How could I tell them their dad had just walked out on us the moment fortune smiled on him? Emily cried herself to sleep for weeks. Jacob started acting out in school, picking fights. And me? I went from shock to anger to numbness, all in a loop that never seemed to end. But as the days stretched on, something inside me hardened. I started hearing whispers around town. People said Reuben wasn't just lucky, that he had helped his way into that win. That his sudden disappearance wasn't just about the money. It was about secrets buried deep. And then came the letter. It arrived in a plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a copy of an old document, my late father's will. At least part of it. The lines were smudged, but I could make out something that made my blood run cold, a note about property assets and a beneficiary that wasn't me. It was Reuben. My father had never trusted him, and yet here was his name, handwritten into a section that didn't make sense. The ink was different, almost forced. That's when I realized. This wasn't luck. Reuben didn't just walk away with lottery money. He walked away with my inheritance too. And he thought I'd never find out. But he was wrong. Because that night, as I sat at the kitchen table staring at that forged will, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to let him destroy me, or take away what my children deserved. He thought he could vanish into the shadows with his secrets. But I would drag every single one of them into the light. And when I was done, Reuben would regret ever underestimating me. I didn't sleep the night I found that letter. I sat at the kitchen table until the sun cracked the horizon, staring at my father's will and trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The handwriting, the ink, the sudden appearance of Reuben's name. It didn't add up. By morning, I looked like a ghost. My eyes were swollen, my head heavy, but I forced myself up. The kids needed breakfast. I made scrambled eggs no one ate, poured orange juice that stayed untouched. Emily kept glancing at me, her 11-year-old mind sensing something was off, but too afraid to ask. Jacob, being 14 and stubborn, just shoved food around his plate and muttered, "Dad's not coming back, is he?" I froze. I wanted to lie. I wanted to promise them he'd walk through that door any second. But what good would it do? So I just said the only truth I knew. We're going to be okay. I'll make sure of it. The words tasted like steel on my tongue. That afternoon, I took the letter to my mother's old friend, Mrs. Dalton. She was the town gossip, the kind who always knew something before it hit the newspapers. Her living room smelled like lavender and dust, and she squinted at the paper through thick glasses. She said, tracing a finger along the smudged line. This doesn't look right. Your daddy never would have left you out like this. I swallowed hard. You think it's fake? Mrs. Dalton leaned closer, lowering her voice. I think Reuben's been planning this longer than you realize. Folks around town been whispering he came into money before that lottery ticket. Some say he had help. Some say he took something that wasn't his. Her words chilled me more than the draft blowing through her cracked window. I left her house with my head buzzing, the letter folded tight in my coat pocket. If Reuben had faked part of my father's will, then this wasn't just about him abandoning us. It was about him stealing from us. And I couldn't shake the thought that the lottery might have been his way of covering tracks too big to hide. That evening, I tried to focus on the kids, but the walls of our home felt like they were closing in. Bills stacked on the counter. Reuben's empty closet screaming his absence. The silence was unbearable. I needed answers. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through Reuben's things. The few he hadn't taken. His old work boots, a cracked watch, and a wooden box shoved deep under the bed. Inside were scattered receipts, scraps of paper, and tucked between them, a business card. Black, sleek, with silver letters that shimmered when I tilted it. Alan Mercer, attorney at law. I didn't know the name, but something about it made my stomach knot. The next morning, after dropping the kids at school, I drove across town to the address on the card. A tall office building loomed, glass reflecting the cloudy sky. My beat-up car looked out of place among the sleek sedans in the parking lot. When I walked in, the receptionist gave me a polite but cold smile. Do you have an appointment? No, I admitted. But I need to see Mr. Mercer. It's urgent. She hesitated, then picked up the phone. After a clipped exchange, she told me to wait. Minutes later, a man appeared. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. He looked me up and down like he was cataloging every weakness. Mrs. Hartwell, he said smoothly as if he already knew who I was. Why don't we step into my office? My pulse quickened. Inside, his office smelled of leather and power. He gestured for me to sit. I clutched the letter in my bag, so tightly my knuckles ached. I'll be direct, I said. Did Reuben come to you? Did you help him with this? I slid the folded will across the desk. For the first time, his mask slipped. His jaw tightened, and he tapped a finger against the paper. I don't know what you think you've stumbled onto, he said, voice low, but digging into Reuben's affairs won't end well for you. Fear prickled my skin, but anger pushed it back. So you admit he's hiding something? He leaned forward, eyes glinting like a predator's. I'm telling you to let it go. I left his office shaking, my heart pounding in my ears. But as I walked back to my car, I knew one thing for certain. Mercer wasn't just Reuben's lawyer. He was part of whatever Reuben was building behind my back. And if he thought I was going to let it go, he didn't know me at all. That night, I sat the kids down again. Emily curled against me, Jacob pretending not to care but listening harder than anyone. We're going to fight, I told them. We're going to uncover the truth, no matter how dark it gets. For the first time since Reuben left, Jacob looked me in the eye. Then we'll fight with you. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't alone.
I couldn't shake Mercer's words from my mind. Digging into Reuben's affairs won't end well for you. They echoed like a warning, but also like a dare. He wanted me scared. He wanted me silent. But I wasn't going to be either. The next morning, I drove Emily and Jacob to school and forced a smile as they got out of the car. Emily hesitated, clutching her backpack straps. Mom, you look tired, she said softly. Don't let him win, okay? Her words pierced through me. My little girl, already learning the language of battles she should never have to fight. I kissed her cheek and promised, I won't. After they disappeared inside, I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. If Mercer was involved, Then Reuben had built himself more than a wall of money. He had built a fortress of lies, guarded by men who knew how to bury the truth. But I also knew something about walls. They always had cracks. And I had just seen the first one. That afternoon, I went to the county records office. It was a squat brick building that smelled of mildew and paper, but it held decades of secrets. The clerk at the desk barely looked at me when I asked for property records under my father's name. She slid a stack of files toward me and went back to sipping her coffee. I flipped through the documents, my hands trembling. There it was, my father's land deed, the farmhouse, and the orchard. Except something was off. On one page, my father's signature looked bold and steady, just as I remembered. On another, it was faint, almost like a tracing, and scrawled in the margins, a name, Reuben Hartwell, beneficiary. My chest tightened. He'd inserted himself where he didn't belong. But why? The land wasn't worth millions. It was sentimental, yes. My father had worked it until the day he collapsed in the fields. But money? No. Unless there was something about that property I didn't know. I copied the documents, tucking them into my bag before heading home. That evening, Jacob barged into the kitchen, dropping his backpack on the floor. Mom, some kids at school said Dad bought a house in the city. Is that true? My heart stopped. Who told you that? Ethan's brother. He works construction. Said he saw Dad at a site downtown, throwing money around like he owns the place. Jacob's eyes burned with anger. So he does have money. And he just left us here like we're nothing. Emily, sitting at the table with her homework, whispered, "Why would he do that, Mom?" I had no answer, but a storm was gathering inside me. Reuben wasn't just hiding. He was building a new life, using money that wasn't rightfully his. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat alone in the living room with the copied documents spread out before me. My mind kept circling back to Mercer's warning, the altered will, and now the rumor of a new house. I needed someone who could cut through this mess. Someone smarter than Reuben's slick lawyer. The next morning, I walked into a modest office tucked between a laundromat and a hardware store. The sign on the door read, Michael Grant, Attorney at Law. He wasn't flashy. His office was cluttered, his tie loose, his coffee half spilled on a pile of folders. But when he looked at me, there was no calculation in his eyes, just curiosity and a quiet sharpness. I handed him the letter and the copied documents. I think my husband forged his way into my father's will. And now he's abandoned us after winning the lottery. My voice cracked, but I held my ground. I need help. Grant studied the papers, his brow furrowed. You're right. These signatures don't match. And see this section. He pointed to a clause in the will. It's been altered. Amateur job, but just clean enough to pass if no one looked too closely. My stomach turned. So he really stole from us? Grant leaned back, folding his hands. Looks that way. And if he's got Mercer backing him, then he's covering more than just this. I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me, but also a flicker of something new. Hope. For the first time since Reuben left, I had someone in my corner. Here's the thing, Mrs. Hartwell, Grant said, his voice steady. Men like Reuben think they're untouchable. But every scheme leaves a trail. And I know how to follow it. I exhaled slowly, my fists unclenching. Then let's bring him down. Grant gave a small smile. It won't be easy. He'll fight back. And it's going to get ugly. I don't care, I said. My voice didn't shake this time. He took my children's future. I'm not letting him keep it. When I left Grant's office, the late afternoon sun bathed the street in gold. For the first time in weeks, I felt stronger. Reuben had built his fortress. But now, I had someone ready to help me tear it down, brick by brick. And I swore to myself, I wasn't stopping until the whole thing crumbled. Michael Grant wasted no time. The morning after our first meeting, he called me back into his office. His desk was cluttered with new files, and he looked like he'd been up all night chasing threads. "Paulina," he said, pushing a folder toward me, "your instincts were dead on. Reuben didn't just alter your father's will, he used it as leverage." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. Leverage for what? Grant pulled out a deed transfer document. This farmhouse and the orchard, your inheritance, were quietly shifted into his name 2 months before he ever bought that lottery ticket. That means he already had assets, and the lottery win just gave him cover to make the money look legitimate. I gripped the edge of the desk. So the lottery was his mask? Grant nodded. Exactly. If anyone questioned his sudden wealth, he could point to the ticket. Clean. Untouchable. He tapped the papers. But it's not clean. And it's definitely not untouchable. For the first time, I saw the cracks forming in Reuben's shiny new life. He thought he'd outsmarted me. But he hadn't counted on me finding someone who could read his game. I asked the question I dreaded, "So what do we do now?" Grant leaned back, his eyes sharp. "We build a case. Piece by piece. But Paulina, this won't stay quiet for long. Once he knows you're digging, he'll come after you." His words echoed Mercer's threat, but instead of fear, I felt something else, a spark of defiance. Let him. That night, I sat with Emily and Jacob at the kitchen table. I didn't tell them everything, just enough, that their father had done something wrong, that I had a lawyer now, and that we were fighting for what was ours. Jacob clenched his jaw, fists tight. Good. He doesn't get to walk away like nothing happened. Emily, quieter, whispered, "But what if he hurts you, Mom?" I reached across the table, taking her small hand in mine. "Then he'll find out just how strong your mom really is." A few days later, the first blow landed. I came home from work at the diner to find a sleek black car parked across the street. A man in a dark suit sat inside, sunglasses hiding his eyes even though it was nearly dusk. He didn't move, didn't get out, just sat there, watching. My pulse raced. I hurried the kids inside, double-checking the locks. When I peeked through the curtain 10 minutes later, the car was gone. The next morning, I found a single envelope on the porch. No stamp, no handwriting. Inside was just one sentence, typed neatly on white paper. "Stop digging, Paulina. For your children's sake." My hands trembled as I read it, but then the fear turned hot in my chest. He wanted me silent. He wanted me small. But Reuben should have known better. I brought the letter to Grant. He scanned it, his expression grim. "This is intimidation. Classic Mercer move." He tapped the page. "It means they're worried. You're closer to something than they want you to be." "What's something?" I asked. He slid another file toward me. I dug into Reuben's lottery claim. Turns out he didn't just walk into the state office with a winning ticket. He had a financial advisor and a trust set up before he ever claimed the prize. Which begs the question, why would a man who just got lucky be that prepared? My heart pounded in my ears. Because it wasn't luck. Grant's eyes met mine. Because he planned it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the creak of the old house, my mind racing. The altered will. The deed transfer. The threatening letter. The shadowy lawyer. And now the possibility that the lottery win itself was more than chance. I stared at the ceiling and whispered to the darkness, "What did you do, Reuben?" For a moment, I felt crushed under the weight of it all. But then I remembered Emily's small hand in mine, Jacob's anger burning in his eyes, my father's orchard, the legacy he'd wanted me to protect. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for them. And as I closed my eyes, I swore one thing. No matter what fortress Reuben had built around his lies, I would be the storm that tore it down. By the end of that week, I realized something unsettling. Fear was no longer stopping me. It was sharpening me. Every threat, every shadow, every whisper Reuben sent my way only fed the fire inside me. But even fire needs direction. That's where Michael Grant came in. When I walked into his office that Friday, he already had papers spread across his desk. "I've been digging," he said without looking up. His voice was steady, but I saw the excitement in his eyes. "And I think I know how Reuben pulled it off." My pulse quickened. "The lottery?" Grant nodded. "There's a man named Carl Denton, mid-level clerk at the state lottery office. He signed off on Reuben's claim. Normally, that's routine. But Denton's bank account saw a sudden influx of money around the same time. Money that doesn't match his salary. Quiet deposits, offshore routing." The words hit me like cold water. "You're saying Reuben bribed him?" "Or partnered with him," Grant said. "Either way, it wasn't luck. It was manipulation. Fraud." I sank into the chair across from him, my hands trembling. "So everything he's flaunting, everything he's using to build his new life, it's stolen." Grant leaned forward. "Which makes him vulnerable. Fraud on this scale. It's a federal crime. But we need proof. And Denton is the key." The name burned into my brain. Denton. The man who helped Reuben steal our lives. That night, I lay awake again, listening to the sounds of my children breathing down the hall. Emily had left her lamp on, afraid of the dark. Jacob had kicked his blanket halfway to the floor. I thought about what Grant had said. Fraud, bribery, offshore accounts, and then the letter on my porch. Stop digging. They were right about one thing. I was digging, and I wasn't stopping. The next morning, I tried to distract myself with ordinary chores. Laundry, groceries, patching the leak under the sink, but ordinary didn't exist anymore. Every corner of the house reminded me of Reuben. His voice, his presence, his absence. By noon, I couldn't sit still. I called Grant. "How do we find Denton?" "Carefully," he said. "Men like him don't talk to strangers. But if we can corner him, maybe shake his confidence, he might slip. He's not as insulated as Mercer." His words settled heavy in me. This wasn't just about paperwork anymore. This was about people. Real, corrupt men standing between me and the truth. That weekend, I took the kids out for pizza. I wanted to give them a sense of normal, even just for a night. But halfway through dinner, Jacob froze, his eyes narrowing toward the window. "Mom," he whispered, "that guy's watching us." I followed his gaze. Across the street, the same black car from before. Same tinted windows. Same invisible eyes. My blood ran cold. I forced a smile for Emily and Jacob. "Finish your slices. Don't look outside." But inside, I was seething. Reuben was trying to scare me into silence, to remind me he was always one step ahead. But what he didn't realize was that his surveillance only proved one thing: he was worried. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with the lights low, staring at the copied will, the property deeds, and Grant's notes on Denton. I thought about my father, his rough hands, his steady voice, the way he used to say, "The truth always outlives the lie, Paulina." He was right. Reuben could have his cars, his suits, his shadowy lawyer, and his faceless men in black cars. But I had something stronger. I had the truth. And with Grant's help, I was going to prove it. I leaned over the papers, whispering to myself, "I'm not afraid of you, Reuben. Not anymore." And for the first time since the night he left, I believed it.